FM HD2.
I'm sure when we were talking to Buster Olney, Brock, 2009, there was no way he thought we'd still be together doing this show all these years later and still calling him to bother him and talk about the Mariners. But here we are. Buster, good morning. Thanks for being with us today. How are you?
Yeah, no problem. But I think the real issue was you guys didn't think there's any chance that I would still be out there being worthy of a phone call.
That's probably true also. But here we all are. We're still doing it. And all these years later, this might be the best Mariner team we've seen in all of that time. They haven't always played that way. But as we sit here this morning, Buster, they're in first place.
And it's remarkable because I think that if you were to poll, this is just based loosely on conversations I've had with executives around the sport, evaluators from other teams. If you were to ask the simple question, which team is the best team in the American League, which team gives the American League the best chance to win the World Series, I think the Mariners would finish first. And yet, they're incredibly vulnerable, which, I mean, it says a lot about, how the American League has played out and the general mediocrity of the American League. And people have asked me in recent days, like, how is this going to play out with the American League Wild Card, American League West? And I'm like, man, I don't know, because all these teams have had these zigs and zags the whole year, and I don't think there's more of a Jekyll and Hyde team than the Mariners.
Do you have a theory on why? We asked Passan this question too, and he didn't necessarily have an answer. He had some theories. Do you have a theory on why this year in particular has been so up and down with all of these teams on roller coaster rides?
So I think that generally, and this is from 30,000 feet, I think all the pitching injuries have been a great equalizer within the sport and pulled all these teams together. And suddenly, that becomes the barometer for what's going to happen. Our bullpens, because of all the injuries, especially starting pitchers, become the barometer of how, teams are going to play. And as you guys know, like, there's no more volatile part of a baseball team than bullpens. In some ways, it would be like, Brock, if in football all you did was base results on kickers, can you imagine that? But I think, you go across the board, team after team after team after team, they've suffered to a high extent, devastating injuries to their pitchers. And I think that sort of pulled everybody closer together. And part of the reason why the American League is so mediocre.
Buster, how dangerous is Texas? I think we all talk about Houston, and we caught Houston, but is Texas last year's Detroit Tigers reincarnated?
And maybe a little bit more dangerous than that, because this group of players, at least some of them, already have experienced the path of sort of crawling into the postseason and then having success. And so when Bruce Bochy, stands in the corner of the dugout, he's someone who's won 4 World Series. And they talk about, taking it day by day and going forward. And I talked to Boch earlier this week. The players can believe it because so many of them lived it. Now, we talked about injuries. I mean, Nathan Eovaldi's down, and Marcus Semien is out for the year, and Corey Seager's out. I mean, it's remarkable that the Rangers are even in this conversation. But I think Chris Young, who runs their baseball operations, super competitive. And although the Mariners deservedly get all the headlines at the trade deadline, I thought Chris did a great job. Merrill Kelly picked up from the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's been great for them.
Talking to Buster Olney here on Seattle Sports. I saw you and Hembo yesterday, and I think we actually played some of his sound talking about Brian Wu as a number 1 starter for the Mariners in the playoffs and everything the bullpen has done the following day, which I thought was a really interesting way of looking at it. I think we all agree Brian Wu's probably the number 1 starter for this team in the postseason. What do you do next? Because there are arguments for and against, I think, everyone else on this staff, and someone's probably going to have to go to the bullpen. How would you handle the rest of this staff if and when they're able to make it into a postseason?
Well, I do think it comes down to this time of year, okay, who's hot and who's not. An embodiment of that right now with the New York Mets, who have all these veteran starters on their team, but it might be that their 1, 2, and 3 starters in the postseason are guys who've been in the big leagues for less than 3 weeks. Okay. I think Aaron Boone said recently before a Sunday night game, it's that time of year. Like, it's just now it's who's hot and who's not. So that obviously will be a big factor. And then you get into the question of, okay, who's best suited to come out of the bullpen? Who is someone who, can embrace that role, won't necessarily take a long time to warm up. If you wind up piggybacking, maybe that's the way you go. My instinct is, and I'm not around the team on a daily basis, is that Logan Gilbert also would have a spot. And then it comes down to trust. And, Louis Castillo, if he continues to, sort of build on his most recent outing and pitch better, then I just because of it being a veteran pitcher, I think a lot of times you see teams go that way.
Buster, I'll have you fill in the blank the same way Jeff did with us earlier this week. Now, 15 games to go. The Mariners win the American League West if they do what?
If they pitch better. If their starting pitching is more consistent. If they can actually, pitch better on the road than what they've had. That's what it comes down to. I think I don't think we were wrong when at the trade deadline, we declared the Mariners the big winners because they got Naylor and they got Suarez, and we all thought, okay, with that great rotation coming back together, this is a really dynamic and dangerous team. And they were for, a couple weeks, and then they began these ups and downs. They have to continue, or they have to get better starting pitching as we get on the stretch.
You mentioned at the beginning, and I love it, that they might be considered the most dangerous team in the league, or at least in the American League, by various executives. Why is that? What are they pointing to? Because the pitching, as you just said, has been okay. Is it the lineup? Is it the sort of ability to win games in different styles? Like, what do you think they point to?
Well, first and foremost, it's one of the deepest lineups in the American League. I'm sure you guys have talked about it. It looks like it's the deepest Seattle lineup since 2001. And I think everyone still looks at the potential of that rotation, and they talk about Gilbert as if he's at his best, and Castillo and what he can be when he's at his best. Miller when he could be at his best. We did a lot of preparation. George Kirby pitched in the Little League Classic in our game. And we spent so much time talking about Kirby and how good he'd been, and then he was just terrible. And I remember talking to David Cohn after that game, and we were just scratching our heads going, what happened? And I think there's some of that feeling within the Seattle organization, too.
Last thing for me, Buster, and appreciate you hopping on with us. It's been a long time for me. I think you've caught up with Salky a few different times when I've been out and otherwise, but great to have you aboard. You did see these Mariners up close and personal. It feels like the conversations turned so much to winning the West and the playoffs and a little bit of Cal Raleigh MVP on the back burner. But if Buster Olney is voting for American League MVP, who's he casting his vote for?
And it's it's one of the best questions that we have in this month. Most interesting questions that we have in this month. And before we did that Little League Classic, we talked a lot about that on the Zoom prep call, and it was amazing to me that the stats guys on that call were like, "It's definitely Judge. It has to be Judge because his offensive performance is historic, especially in a year in which there are so few 300 hitters." He is far and away the best player. And as someone who's voted for the MVP in the past, my eyebrows are raised. And I'm like, I don't know. And really, at the beginning of this month, my feeling was, and I still feel this way, is that the award is out there to be won by either one of these guys. I think if I turned in a ballot today, Cal would be the guy that I would have in the number one spot, because it's not a small deal that he's considered to be one of the elite defensive catchers in baseball. And that's all, backed up by metrics, by the pitch framing statistics that you can find on Baseball Savant. So, as we sit here today, I think that if either one of these guys absolutely has a blistering surge down the stretch, they can grab the award, like Judge did last night with 2 home runs.
Yeah. Cal didn't get much of a chance. They just keep walking him these days. There's no reason to pitch to him. They're just like, yeah, thanks. We're good. We'll take our chances with somebody else. So we'll see. Going to be a fun final couple of weeks. Buster, thank you. I know you're running from place to place. Sunday Night Baseball this week is where?
Is in Boston, Red Sox, Yankees. It's all intertwined. Mariners, Red Sox, Yankees, Rangers, Astros.
Yeah.
They're all sort of Jays. They're all strung together.
First time you've been there for Sunday Night Baseball against the Yankees? No. Okay, you've done it before. Buster, thank you. Seriously, we really do appreciate it. Thanks for spending a few minutes, and hopefully we will see you and talk to you again in a couple weeks in the playoffs.
Okay, that sounds great. See you guys.
There you
Buster.
go. There's Buster Olney of ESPN. And